the meeting of the Harwich Board of Appeals on this date, September 17th. The purpose of this meeting is to hear and decide applications before the Board of Appeals, which have been brought pursuant to the bylaws of the town of Harwich and the Massachusetts Zoning Enabling Act. And I'd like to first start off by having, again, I'm Brian Sullivan, the chair of the Board of Appeals. Gentlemen, ladies, can you introduce yourselves?
We are on rocks.
Turn your speakers on, folks.
Could we increase the volume overall for the sound? Please. For you all. We are on rocks.
Yeah, thanks.
Alexander Donahue. David Nunnally.
Chris Murphy. John August.
Steve Planning Director, Town of Harwich. Katie Custer, Town Council.
So again, good evening. The focus of tonight's agenda are new topics: environmental and conservation considerations regarding the Pine Oaks Village 4 development, site plans, and including site plans and infrastructure. We will first hear from representatives of Horsey Wood Group and LEC, the applicant's consultants, followed by TRC Environmental Corporation, the peer consultants hired by the town of Harwich. Amy Usowski, the Harwich Conservation Agent, will next present an assessment of proposed development from the Harwich Conservation Department. Then PHB, the town peer consultant, will present a summary of their opinions pertaining to stormwater management and site plans. As a follow-up to the Board of Appeals request, the Harwich Planning Board to review development plans, Christine Flynn will review opinions from members of the Planning Board. She will also offer her own insights as the Harwich Planning Director. When and as appropriate, the Board of Appeals and applicant will have the opportunity to question these professionals and comment upon their findings and opinions. I will then open the hearing for public comment. We have budgeted 60 minutes. My goal is to prioritize the allotted time to residents wishing to express opinions and ask questions regarding tonight's topics, which is environmental conservation issues and perhaps Board of Health issues. I therefore require or request that anyone wishing to discuss a different topic, such as traffic on public roads, will need to wait until all that desire to discuss environmental and conservation health issues have had an opportunity. Regarding the impact of this development to public road infrastructure, the previous public hearings have provided the Board of Appeals with a substantial record on the issues of traffic and public safety. Over the course of the review, the applicant, their consultants, along with town staff, independent experts, and members of the public have presented substantial data, studies, and testimony about how the project may affect surrounding roadways as a range of potential mitigation measures that can lessen the impacts and improve overall traffic and flow and safety. With this information now on the table, besides the reverberation here, which is what we're trying to essentially do, the ZBA has sufficient foundation to deliberate on how Pine Oaks Village 4 would affect traffic and safety on public roads. As a reminder, all professional reports, including summaries and opinions, are posted on the appeals website. That also includes all the opinions and comments from the public. There have been several new entries since our last hearing on August 6th. All written opinions from residents submitted to the Board of Appeals are also posted and read by the Board. The Board of Appeals continues to welcome the submittal of options by Harwich residents. Thank you for your time and consideration of this evening's goals. And I'd like to request now the Board that the clerk of the Board of Appeals read in the first case, or the case. Thank you.
Case number 2025-21. Leanne Acres.
LLC, and Big Cape Church Homes, Inc., doing business as Pine Oaks Village Homes. The case has been continued from August.
Can't hear you.
The case has been continued from August 6, 2025.
Okay.
Thank you. And why don't we begin with the applicant and your members of LEC and forces of it. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate the agenda. Peter Freeman, attorney for the applicant. And I will just turn it right over to Brian Madden and then Joe Henderson.
Good evening, Brian Madden, LEC Environmental Consultants. So we will be reviewing the wetlands and rare species associated with the site. And as Joe pulls up the map, we have initiated our site work on the project site in 2003. We had conducted a site evaluation to identify and demarcate protectable wetlands on the project site or within the vicinity. Is that not sharing?
Yeah, sure.
There's a little bit of a lag now.
Actually, while we're waiting here, I wanted to mention to the folks that may be dialing in, linking into the meeting, I'd appreciate a comment. That you could send a message that you're hearing the meeting correctly. The new town administrator, working with the staff here at 204, and improve the communication capabilities of this meeting hall so that people, particularly that are dialing in, can appropriately hear the meeting and also participate as needed.
All right, thank you very much. So this is a locus map that identifies the wetlands on our immediately adjacent. There we go. All right, thank you. So there's the Herring River that's located northwest of the project site. The 200-foot riverfront area associated with that does minimally extend across Queen Anne's Road onto the northwesterly corner of the site along that roadway entrance frontage. There are 4 identified wetlands on or immediately off-site, starting with wetland A. That is a isolated wetland that is only a little over 1,000 square feet in size, and given that is non-jurisdictional under the local wetlands regulations. There's a 3,000 square footage associated with protectable isolated wetlands. So there's no jurisdictional buffer zones under the bylaw that extend off of that. We had We had reviewed. So there's wetland A. We had evaluated that in the spring of 2003 under non-drought conditions to confirm that that isolated wetland does not function as a vernal pool. The wetland B is identified as a bordering vegetated wetland in the northeasterly portion of the site. On the state GIS mapping, there is shown to be a additional load to the wetland that extends into the right-of-way for the power line easement. And then there's a hydrologic connection that connects to wetland B, therefore it's characterized as a bordering vegetated wetland system. Because that's mostly off-site, we didn't evaluate it fully. It only minimally extends into the northeasterly corner. It is identified also as a certified vernal pool based on observations from the roadway and the project site. It would appear to still function in that capacity given the hydrology and sustaining standing water through the spring breeding season. There's an additional isolated wetland. This is an abandoned cranberry bog located within the southerly portion of the site. There are no functional ditches associated with that cranberry bog. And then there's minimally, you can't really see it on this screen image, but there's a wetland D, which is also an isolated wetland. That is over 3,000 square feet in size, but it is, there's no work proposed with 100 feet of that wetland itself. So there's a minimal amount of work within jurisdictional buffer zones under the State Wetlands Protection Act. Those are bordering vegetated wetlands and the 200-foot riverfront area. Joe is going to go into that a little bit more detail, but there will be a notice of intent filed with the Conservation Commission for that work within jurisdictional buffer zones and or the riverfront area. And I'll turn it over to him. And then I'll come back to talk about rare species.
Great, thank you, Brian. Joe Henderson, Worsley Witten Group. And I was going to walk through the three areas where we are encroaching into the buffer zones. The first one we're looking at here is the 200-foot riverfront buffer. The hatched area is the project area within that buffer zone, and that includes the entry drive to the project and a portion of the sidewalk. In total, that's 608 square feet, and all of that area, as you can see, is there we go. It's further out from the existing disturbance within the 200-foot river, so we're beyond the existing disturbance in that area. The second area, as Brian mentioned, is wetland B. Wetland B is north of Lodge 1 building, just to orient yourself. We have a disturbance in this area of 2,960 square feet. You can see it's consistent of some of the stormwater features, some of the grading, a portion of the wall, and there's a concrete pad and some pavement related to the infrastructure. Again, that's north of Lodge 1. And lastly, I wanted to point out the wetland C. So wetland C is in the south of the property, just south of Townhouse 3. And the disturbance there is 1,800 square feet. And that is between the 60 and 100-foot buffer. So all the disturbance is outside of the 60-foot buffer within the 100-foot buffer. In this case, it is a 20-foot buffer encroachment. I didn't mention the previous wetland B, but that was a 28-foot buffer encroachment. And this encroachment includes some of the sheds for the building and the patio areas. With that, I'll turn it back to Brian.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so at the closest points, those encroachments were 72 linear feet to wetland B and 80 feet. 72 linear feet to wetland B and 80 linear feet for wetland C. And also just to state that there's no flood zone associated with the project site, extending on site. As it relates to rare species, the site is not located within a map priority or estimated habitat by the state Massachusetts Endangered Species Program, Division of Fisheries and Wildlife. Therefore, there is no state review for the project by Natural Heritage. There is some federal Endangered Species Act compliance requirements when it comes to filing what is prior to the start of work an EPA construction general permit. For site disturbance, you have to document compliance with the Federal Endangered Species Act. So as part of that, we did an informal review of U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They have an online tool to identify what federally listed species may be located within the project area. And what is somewhat typical for Cape Cod The species generated there were northern long-eared bat, tricolored bat, which is proposed for endangered, so it's not currently listed. Monarch butterfly, that's proposed threatened species, so it's not currently listed. And sandplain gerardia, which is an endangered plant associated with like sandplain grassland habitats within very isolated historic populations on Cape Cod and dual locations. But as part of that EPA construction general permit, this is a pre-work requirement. The project would adhere to all federal requirements in effect at the time. And so that would be completed prior to the start of work. And with that concludes my rare species discussion.
Great, thanks. And I just wanted to finish up with just an overview of the wastewater as it relates to public health. We are proposing an advanced treatment wastewater plant. I have a blow up here of the location. The blue indicates what would be built for phase 1 of the wastewater plant. Both phases would include nitrogen reducing system. The flow for build out is 47,000 roughly gallons per day. That's all 5 phases. But phase 1 of the plant will be 9,900 gallons per day, and that would be an interim groundwater discharge permit or interim Title V system. Because the whole of the flow is greater than 10,000 gallons per day, this would be permitted under the Mass DEP's groundwater discharge permit regulations. And just a quick overview of what that entails. There's 2 components. There's the hydrogeologic report and the engineering report. The first part is the hydrogeologic evaluation, and this would include additional soil testing to verify the loading rates for the disposal beds. There's monitoring well installation that's used to view the background water quality data. We also use that to determine the site-specific groundwater flow. And that, in this particular case, we know the regional flow is from the northeast to the southwest towards the west reservoir. So we would do additional water level measurements and wells to determine site-specific information. We also do well pumping tests. We use that to determine the mounding. We use that in part of the mounding calculations. You have to determine the mound that the wastewater would create at full capacity. Also, we will, as part of that hydro study, we have to look at all of the impacts to sensitive receptors within 1/2 mile of the property. So that includes complying with the TMDL on the Herring River watershed. So that would be all part of the hydrogeologic study report. Once that report is submitted to DP and approved, then you would move to the next phase, which is the detailed design of the wastewater plant. All of this takes place, again, with the state. We are also looking at potentially supplementing our treatment system with some enhanced nitrogen reduction with a technology called a permeable reactive barrier. And what this technology does is it intercepts just in general nutrients in the groundwater. You inject a carbon-based substance into the ground. It creates a barrier that the nutrients have to pass through, and it will enhance that nutrient removal it's in this watershed. These PRBs, they're actually been contemplated in the town's comprehensive wastewater management plan, and they've also been implemented for nutrient reduction on the Cape and other places. So with that, that ends our presentation, so we're here to answer questions.
I'd like to ask the board if you have any questions. Please ask them now. Remember, these use your mics, we're all sharing mics, so pull up the mic over to your seat and ask the question. Thank you. Good.
I have a question concerning the wastewater treatment. You have two phases. The first one, which would be the enhanced nitrogen septic, and then the wastewater treatment plant after. I guess that starts in phase 2. Is that right?
That's correct, yep.
Why could not, is there a reason you can't start that full wastewater treatment plant in phase 1?
So we could, but we anticipate treating to the same level as we would treat in the wastewater treatment plant as far as nitrogen removal. What it would be is just a smaller scale version, but it would be considered an interim Title V system just because of the size. The flow is less than 10,000 gallons per day.
So the nitrogen, phosphorus, other materials that would enter the groundwater will be similar in both cases?
That's the plan, yes. Yep.
So the alternative to this project, it's zoned for acre. So obviously you put 20 homes in there, so 20 regular septic systems versus this design for wastewater treatment, which is enhanced nitrogen removal. Can you compare those two options? You know what I'm saying?
So just a conventional, non-alternative system?
Correct.
So typically like for example, nitrogen, I can compare that is say 35 milligrams per liter in a Title V system versus maybe it's down to 10 or in an advanced treatment system or less.
It's about a quarter.
Yeah.
A little less than a quarter reduction.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Any other questions?
My question relates specifically to your request for a waiver. Harwich has a code or a standard that would require a 50-year plan for stormwater, and your initial application was for a 25-year plan. I think I'm reading that you are going to be removing that waiver because you're building to a 50-year standard. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I believe as part of the peer review process, we updated our design to 50-year storm.
I would just like to say thank you very much, because that was the primary concern.
Any other questions? Well, I'd like to now call on item 3 here, the Environmental Public Health and Wetlands Rare Species Impact Peer Review by TRC.
Jeff first?
And this is Jeff.
Yeah, I'll introduce myself.
Thank you. By the way, Jeff, we'll be giving you a little time-wise if we get closer to 45 minutes.
Sure, thank you.
Sorry about that delay. Can you get the full screen?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jeff Hirschberger. I'm a senior hydrogeologist with TRC Environmental. Joined here today with Ryan Clapp, who's one of our professional wetland scientists. We're here to present the results of some focused peer review work we've done on behalf of the town. We'll be talking today about some environmental issues that I reviewed. We'll also be talking about some public health, which is going to really focus on wastewater. We also did a geotechnical review. One of our geotechnical engineers out in Ohio did a review of the work that's been done by BAR Engineering so far. And then Ryan will be coming up and speaking about wetlands and rare species. And appreciate you having us here. As I said, I'll lead off with the environmental peer review. I'm a senior hydrogeologist at TRC. I do a lot of work on waste sites, disposal, remediation, cleanup, assessment, also a lot of work on water supply, and a lot of other hydrogeologic evaluations. So I've tried to set these up by topics. We've run through a bunch of different things using the available information that was on the appeals board website. I'll start to speak first just in general kind of about the property itself and the proposed utilities, trying to focus on the potential for adverse impacts to soil or groundwater resulting from the property. As most of you may know, Beta, back in 2022 and 2023, did a couple phase 1 environmental site assessments on the property. They looked at historical information, historic aerials, did site recon, the usual things that are required as part of the ESA process, which is really done under the guidance of documents from ASTM and also EPA's All Appropriate Inquiries guidance. The good outcome from that was Beta did not identify any current recognized environmental conditions on any historic RECs or any control RECs on the property. So that's a great thing. Based on their review, the property is obviously undeveloped now and looks like it's been undeveloped historically. So just as a check on that, just to double check, we did do a little bit of a review ourselves on the Mass DEP Searchable Sites database. It came back with results very consistent, and there's really no open disposal sites on or near the property. So that's good. So there's no known OHM releases really in the project area. Any of the sites that were in the area have already been closed, and we're actually a fairly good distance or down gradient of the property. What this means is a couple things. As part of the project, we'll be doing a bunch of excavating on the property, moving soils around, things of that sort. There really shouldn't be any issues with moving soils around on the property itself. Although we all know that once you start opening up a site like this and doing a lot of excavation, obviously the intent would be for any contractors or any oversight personnel to remain diligent. But once you start excavating, you really don't know what you're going to find. So they do need to stay diligent. We'll talk a little bit more about that on a topic that I have coming up in a couple slides. The only real recommendation we had relative to site conditions and really soil management for the project would be if the applicant proposes to bring any soil or fill onto the property, the town should require adequate testing of that material to make sure it is clean. We certainly don't want to bring any problems onto the property as part of the construction activities. Second topic was really the proposed utilities. We wanted to look at what was going to be used and stored on the property. Again, another opportunity for potential releases into the subsurface. Nice to see that the focus is on renewable and electricity-based options. That really minimizes that potential. The only carbon-based fuels that are going to reportedly be stored on the property are going to be related with an emergency generator at the community center. Really, our only recommendation, and it may be a requirement of the Board of Fire Prevention Regulations anyway, is to really kind of round off this nice story here, and the town should request secondary containment on that tank, just to make sure that we don't have any potential for a release from that. Because then I think really the proposed utility is a really good story for the project.
Yeah, I might.
Yes.
Is that tank buried?
It wasn't specified, so I don't know. My suspicion and my expectation is it would be an above-ground storage tank.
Sorry, I missed the question. It's above ground storage, yes, for the generators?
So, so secondary containment would be appropriate. Next topics I wanted to speak to were construction dewatering and the proximity to drinking water sources and any potential for adverse impacts on any of those. PAR Engineering had done an initial geotechnical evaluation focused on the phase 1 area. That was documented in their geotechnical basis report. I'll speak more to this when I do the geotechnical review results. That report was published in October of 2024. PAR reported that the depth of groundwater ranged from about 14 to 26 feet below ground surface on the property. They also concluded that based on the engineering plans at the time, the expectation was that water could be encountered during some of the work. That work primarily related to subgrades for foundations, utilities, and possibly some of the retaining walls. Dewatering requirements are specified in the NIPD's construction general permit. I forget exactly what section it is, but there are some specific requirements in there related to really treatment, which would focus on really just knocking out the suspended sediment in the water and also knocking out the energy of the pumped water, so you don't do any undue erosion at the time. Given the site conditions and talking to some folks at TRC, this seems like a really great opportunity for requiring reinfiltration of that water directly on the property. There's enough low spots and enough conductivity we expect in the soils that shouldn't be a problem. And it's easier to keep it there than trying to do anything with it as well. So. That's really it. I think it's, again, construction dewatering will likely be required, but the specifications will really be in the construction dewatering that have to get prior to starting construction. As far as drinking water sources and the protection areas, if you can see the figure up in the right-hand corner, that's kind of a schematic of the Cape from the Cape Cod Commission that shows the various lenses, which are important elements of the water supplies on the Cape. These are usually where the water departments target their sources, and it certainly has been done by Harwich. They're pumping from the Monomoy lines primarily, if not solely. Roughly, what you see there is...
Can't see it.
Yeah. See, it's up in the corner here. I apologize. It's a little tough. It's a little light to see. Apologize for that. What this shows is a couple things. It kind of confirms the fact that the project is south of the Monomoy lens. So that does confirm the general direction of groundwater flow, as we expected to the south, flowing from the lens down to the Nantucket Sound. What it also shows you is that the project area is generally south of both the water sources, the wells themselves, the primary contribution areas to those wells, and then what's called the Zone 2 wellhead protection area, which really is an extreme protection area around public water supplies. It represents the area of potential contribution to that well under extreme conditions of 180 days of pumping at your safe yield, your approved yield, with no recharge from precipitation to the aquifer. So an extreme drought and extreme pumping. So that really gives you the extent. The project is south of and outside of all of those protection areas. So the project should not have any adverse impacts to the town of Harwich water supplies or the contributing areas, as water will be flowing to the south. Looking at the Mass GIS, Mass Mapper, there is one interim wellhead protection area. Those are usually associated with non-community water systems, so that wouldn't be a municipal well. Those could be things like hotels, schools, and in this case, it happens to be a condominium, Pinewood Village condominium located to the south. But that is, almost 2 miles away and on the opposite side of the Herring River. So uncertain if the wastewater discharge would potentially impact that or not. But that is something the applicant and Horsley and Witten Group will have to work through with DEP. One of the requirements of the groundwater discharge permit will obviously, as Joe had mentioned, itemizing all the potential sensitive receptors that could receive that wastewater flow once it's discharged from the property. And that would include any potential private wells as well. You don't expect it. The town of Harwich has a pretty extensive public water system in the vicinity of the project, but it will be something that we'll have to look at the potential for any private wells in that area. They're not unseen on the Cape, despite the extensive water supplies. But again, I think that's a good story. It shouldn't have any adverse impact to the town's primary water supplies. And again, these are the figures these kind of show here. I don't know if you see my cursor on there at all. You do. Again, town property, or the proposed project property. And then in green up here are the zone 2s. The dots here are the water sources. And then what you see in yellow are the primary zone areas of contribution to the well under normal pumping conditions. So you can see that the project area is well outside of all of those contributing areas, so should be no adverse impacts. And on the right, you see again the project area, and you see the approximate location, and that may be tough to see, of the Pinewood condominiums interim wellhead protection area. Again, a pretty good distance from the proposed project. Again, the applicant's going to have to, deal with DEP on, what are the sensitive receptors in the area of the proposed wastewater discharge, which we'll speak to again here in a couple minutes. Brought up a couple things just in looking at the project, a couple additional topics, thinking about, potential areas of impact to soils or groundwaters. Obviously, this is going to be a large, if approved, this will be a large-scale construction project. You'll have a lot of yellow steel, a lot of vehicles out there, a lot of fuels and things of that sort. So you do have the potential for accidental or unintended spills or releases. Notifications to DEP might be required if the release exceeds a reportable quantity, which I think is 10 gallons for most petroleum-based fuels, or if there's impacts to surface water or storm drain. Those require notifications to DEP. These types of issues are typically also addressed under the NIPD's construction general permit, best management practices, and also in the required stormwater pollution prevention plan that will be required as part of that program. Any responses? Again, I think the important thing with these types of releases is addressing them quickly. The longer they sit, the bigger the problem. So I think it's going to be important for the applicant to make sure that their construction companies are ready and have the on-site equipment ready to respond to these releases quickly. Because if you know what happens, you get to it, you dig it up quick, you can avoid any impacts to groundwater, which just makes it a much bigger problem. So the types of things that we typically wanted to have is spill kits, absorbent booms and pads, some rolls of poly sheeting that they can put in the excavated material on, and then oftentimes some straw wattles and things of that sort. So if they put some contaminated soil on the poly, they can surround it with straw wattles to try to make sure that none of that migrates off of the poly, and they've got it contained. So again, just really being prepared for stuff to happen, keeping your eyes open and responding to things quickly. Also be important to make sure that the lines of communication with the town are open and ready for that type of an incident that does happen. The applicant knows exactly who they notify. The town, the town will understand exactly what they're doing. All of that open communication is very good in case of any of those incidents. The other item that we thought about that is it's important, I live in a similar development up in Hudson, Massachusetts, is an important thing in any residential type of developments is road salting. And the associated application for walkways, driveways, things of that sort. I think it's going to be, it would be prudent for the town to try to work with the applicant to try to figure out what their plan is for those types of applications. Sodium is a very important contaminant that can come from that. But there's things they can do. They can use alternative products that might not contain sodium or a lower amount of it. Or there's some alternative usage approaches that are being developed in other areas in New England. One that I've been involved with a little bit is down in Connecticut. They have a Green Snow program where they're actually training municipal DPWs and private contractors on alternatives and ways to manage the amount of that material that they're applying. Because a lot of that, as we know, ends up washing into storm drains and getting out the stormwater systems, and then that could potentially get out to the groundwater. So this is another item that it may be worthwhile with the town to see if they can work with the applicant on, preparing for OHM spills, oil and hazardous materials, and then road salt applications on the property. Now I'll move over to the public health peer review. Again, this really focused on the wastewater. A lot of what I'm going to be saying was stuff that Joe already mentioned today, that the applicant is in the process of working on with DEP, which I think is great. Based on the volumes, obviously they're going to need to go down the groundwater discharge permit process route, which I've been down a number of times for similar developments out on the Cape. As you mentioned, the groundwater discharge permit regulations require a hydrogeologic study. A lot of people refer to that really as the site suitability assessment. You're really looking at the suitability of the site and the surrounding environment, receptors, things of that sort, to be able to handle the proposed discharge. As Joe mentioned, they are proposing some advanced treatment for both the Title V system, which will be an innovative alternative system, and then obviously it will be required by DEP as part of the groundwater discharge process. DEP is well aware of the conditions out on the Cape and what the sensitivity is of both the freshwater resources and the saltwater imbalance. So they'll be, front and center looking at that. And the one thing that they will have to do is they'll really have to try to look at what their nutrient loading is using that DEP policy, BRP, DWM, PEP, P99.7, which is nutrient loading approach to wastewater permitting and disposal. So they will have to look at that and have to kind of model, in addition to the mounting kind of model where that's going to go. But I do agree with Joe with some of the advanced treatment. For the innovative alternative Title V system, they should be looking at least probably a 65 to 70% reduction in the amount of nitrogen that's released into the environment. And then with the kind of the package plant or the centralized wastewater treatment facility, they should be even get to higher levels of reduction, likely potentially getting over 80% reduction. So it's good. As we mentioned here in our comments, I think it's going to be important for the town to make sure that the proposed wastewater treatment here fits into their comprehensive wastewater management program and provides similar levels of reduction that the town is looking for with the extensive program they have designed, with sewering, some of the natural attenuation enhancements and circulation enhancements in some of the surface water bodies. The town has made a significant commitment to reducing those loads to both the freshwater wetlands and the estuaries, including Harry River, which is a TMDL and also a saltwater recharge And then the comprehensive wastewater management plan really has been designed to be compliant with the Cape Cod Regional Policy Plan. So those should go hand in hand. But certainly as part of that comprehensive wastewater management plan and as part of the TMDL, the expectation is the town that not only will address existing sources, but also will pass those requirements on to any proposed sources. So you would be looking for a certain level of nutrient removal in advance of a typical septic system. So, and DEP is well aware of that, so they should be pushing for that as well. And from what Joe said, that's something the applicant is committed to. And, you know, that's good, because that is probably the major source of nitrogen. As it's been noted in the comprehensive wastewater management plan, septic systems are probably 50 to 70% of the loading in most of the Cape Cod towns. So that is a good thing to be, a good story to be, you know, achieving those types of advanced treatment levels in the wastewater field project as well, in addition to what the town is doing.
Could I just ask you a quick question? In
Oh,
your
sure.
report, you use the term mesotropic
Yes.
to describe some of the soils down gradient. Can you just explain what
Yeah.
the technical term means?
Yeah, that relates to sand pond. So all of the water bodies, or most of the water bodies in Harwich have been classified relative to the level of nutrients that are currently present. Goes from oligotrophic, there's really no presence, we're not seeing any additional vegetation growth, we're not seeing any response to additional nutrients being added. There are a lot of ponds in Harwich that do fall under that category. Mesotrophic starts to have some accumulation of nutrients within the water body. So you are starting to see some response to that, some additional vegetation, some additional, so that water body may be a little more sensitive to added nutrients. You certainly don't want to push it up to the next category, which is eutrophic, where you really start to see algal blooms and problem vegetation, and then you start to have issues with a lot of those nutrients also being present in the water, in the sediments of those water bodies as well. So, and there's interaction between the sediments and the water that can drive some of the algal blooms and some of the adverse conditions that you want. So
essentially, this is the mid-grade.
mid-grade, yes. Yeah, not at the high level, but it's certainly something where you don't want to increase the nutrient load into that water body. So you want to take steps necessary to control that.
Thank you.
Sure. And again, I just threw this up just to kind of look at where are some of the initial sensitive receptors that we looked at. The Herring River Marine Water Resource Area, and also the TMDL area in the southern part of that watershed below the western reservoir. That is really the area that the TMDL applies to. But certainly the conditions throughout the Herring River watershed will contribute to that condition that we see in that southern embayment. And that's really, I tried to identify that by the ones. So you get the upper Herring River, which is really kind of passes by the western side of the property. Goes down through the western and eastern reservoirs, and then you get down to the southern embayment where the TMDL is enacted.
Just because I had a question for you about the 200-foot riverfront area, which is in the northwest corner of the property. Give me information on the expected flows. I know the analysis hasn't been done, but the expected flows are going to be in the south. It's unlikely anything's going to flow up the Herring River in that direction, even though it falls within the 200-foot riverfront.
Correct.
The concern is it's flowing south to the bend.
Yeah, you're getting down into that, any of those, again, Sand Pond is directly south. And it's my understanding, if I'm correct, Joe, the wastewater is kind of portioned in the eastern corner of the property. So.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep, the north, central eastern portion of the property.
Okay. So again, that would minimize the potential for it to get up into that, the Herring River, immediately to the west of the property. So flows would tend to be more to the south, would be my suggestion. I know the regional shows kind of more of a southwest towards the western reservoir, but that will be one of the things they'll be looking at as part of the hydrogeologic study. So they'll be establishing some better feel for what the actual groundwater flow is on the property. That'll be part of the groundwater discharge permit hydrogeologic study. And the margin wells that they'll put in there. Sure. The other things we had in here, obviously there's the cranberry bogs, some of these are inactive, some of these are inactive. I'm not sure of the status of all of those, but they certainly do surround kind of the southern boundary of the property. And then we mentioned Sand Pond, and then also down here in the distance, I had just put in again the Pinewood Village condos, infill wall protection area. And again, noted the potential for some private wells, which will have to be evaluated by the applicant. I'll talk a little bit about the geotechnical peer review. The geotechnical peer review was performed by Sean McGee, one of our PE's geotechnical engineers out in Ohio. Sean is focused, and I've worked on a lot of projects up in New England with him as well, including some work up at the other Herring River up in Wellesley, some of the restoration work that's being done up there. So he has a lot of experience in New England. These will be fairly technical. The folks from Worsley Witten will probably understand these, and the folks from Parr certainly will. But as we mentioned earlier, the geotechnical design report at this point really is focused on phase 1. Our comments are really focused again on what's been performed. Getting into some of the details relative to the townhome and lodge shallow foundation designs. The max allowable soil bearing pressure is set at 2,500 pounds per square inch with a 3.0 factor of safety. And the total settlement is estimated to be allowable for 1 inch and a maximum differential settlement of a ½ inch between foundation elements. Based on Sean's review, the soil pressure and factor of safety seem appropriate for the project. And a total settlement of 1 inch and a differential of 1/2 inch also seem appropriate given the types of structures that would be proposed and constructed as part of the project. Groundwater dewatering, Sean and I talked a little bit about this. His comment here was really just that the contractor should expect a plan for dewatering and control of water during excavation of the subgrade for foundations, utilities, and retaining walls. So in addition to the dewatering and control of that water, one other step they might want to take is to control stormwater at that point, try to keep stormwater away from excavations, because that can just add to the amount of water that you have to pump and manage as part of the dewatering process. And most contractors will do that. They want to try to minimize that amount of water anyway. Relative to topsoil and subsoil removal, the geotechnical design report only covered removal around the building footprints, did not cover the paved areas. Sean's comments were that TRC recommends the topsoil and subsoil stratus also be removed from within the access drive and the parking lot areas. This may be something that evolves as part of further evolves their geotechnical design for the project. Undercuts below these areas should extend a minimum of 3 feet beyond the pavement areas and 5 feet beyond buildings. The geotechnical engineers and the designers should evaluate the volume and extent of undercuts to provide anticipated volume and earthwork costs. That kind of all those volumes will start to add up. And the geotechnical design report indicates Harwich outwash deposits will be reused as limited fill, but there's no recommendations for topsoil or subsoil material related to those activities. So just some additional details. There's one more set. Yeah, here on slope stability. The general grading and drainage notes of the plan set indicate that all cut and fill slopes should be 3-to-1 or flatter. But there is no supporting slope stability analyses to demonstrate that that will be a stable slope. So the recommendation there is to include some slope stability analysis to support the grades that are proposed and the slopes. And then obviously just include a direct reference to the geotechnical design report on the plan sets, if that's the basis of the geotechnical design. Had some other general comments in here, based on the observed relative densities, groundwater elevations, and material composition. The geotechnical design reports that indicates that the in-situ soils are not susceptible to liquefaction. That's a good thing. He recommended reevaluating the need for hammering of large boulders during the initial site excavation, whether that's needed or not. He said to provide the applicable ASTM standards for pavement subgrades on the plan sets, and include references again and guides from the geotechnical design report on all plan sets. So this is some general geotechnical comments there. Sure.
Jeff, I hope you appreciate this time-wise. You've got to be approved, that's like maybe 20 more minutes.
Okay.
So I want to keep that in mind.
Perfect, thank you, Dave.
All right, so if you could particularly focus on the key areas of the plan,
Sure.
which your firm does not agree with the plans of the developer.
Okay.
What needs to be changed.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
His final action items on here that he recommended based on his review of the geotechnical design report and the plan set. Obviously, complete additional geotechnical borings and evaluations for phase 2 through phase 5. Complete additional geotechnical borings and evaluations for final design of the retaining wall and the wastewater treatment facility, once additional details are known. Therefore, complete additional geotechnical borings and lab testing within the parking lots and access drives in phase 1 to support the pavement design. And complete additional geotechnical borings or exploratory test pits within the townhouse, lodge, and pavement areas in phase 1 to obtain a better understanding of the depth and volume of undercut that will be required for the topsoil and subsoil layers, as well as the anticipated volume of material that would need to be imported from an off-site source to achieve final grades, if at all, depending on whether they plan to use on-site materials or import some soils.
Question on that. How does the soil get tested before it gets loaded in a truck from some sort of site and brought to the site? At what point is it being tested?
Typically,
out of a dump truck, or is it being tested at the source?
it should be tested at the source before you load it. I think the last thing you want is to have it be brought to the site and have to wait for testing. So recommended that testing would be done at the source for whatever, sources should be identified in advance of what the sources of the material is going to be, and the testing should be done at the location.
Thank you.
Sure. And that's the end of my discussion. I'll turn it over to Ryan now, who will be talking about wetlands and rare species peer review.
Good evening, my name is Ryan Clapp. I'm a wetland scientist with TRC, and I will be doing the wetlands and rare species peer review for the Pine Oaks Village project. So as was mentioned earlier, we do have 4 wetlands that were delineated on site. There's wetlands they're identified as wetlands A, B, C, and D. Of those 4 wetlands, only wetland B meets the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act threshold to be considered a bordering vegetated wetland, and as such, it receives a 100-foot buffer zone.
Can we put that map back up for everyone regarding the wetlands map? Or is that, can you guys find it so the audience can follow along, or you doing that?
I'm not sure if we'll be able to do that and have the slide show up as well.
Okay, never mind, thank you.
And then, so as such, the other 3 wetlands, wetlands A, C, and D, they are all isolated vegetated wetlands, and they do not meet the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act threshold to be considered isolated land subject to flooding. To meet that threshold, they would need to be a confined depression or basin without an inlet or outlet, and at least once a year it must contain standing water to a volume of at least a quarter acre feet to an average depth of 6 inches. Based on the evaluation of the wetlands by LEC, these wetlands do not meet that criteria, and as such they do not receive a 100-foot buffer zone. These wetlands may receive jurisdiction under the Harwich Wetlands Protection Bylaw. However, as a 40B project, these wetlands, the bylaw would typically be waived under a 40B project, and as such, we limited our review to just the wetlands that would be jurisdictional under the Wetlands Protection Act, just wetland B. So there were two vernal pools that were discussed in the LEC wetlands executive summary. There's the certified vernal pool, which is identified as number 4719. That is associated with wetland B, and that does have vernal pool habitat associated with it. So vernal pool habitat is an area that's 100 feet, 100-foot linear, basically a buffer zone to the edge of, from the edge of a vernal pool outwards, as long as it remains within another buffer zone or jurisdictional area. So it doesn't necessarily extend the entirety of the 100-foot buffer zone to the wetlands. It's just limited to the bounds from the vernal pool. Then there is also a potential vernal pool, which is associated with wetland A. The Wetlands Protection Act only provides protections to certified vernal pools. That has to go through a state process with the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. There has been no such certification for this vernal pool, this potential vernal pool, and as such, it doesn't receive any protections under the Wetlands Protection Act. LEC did perform an evaluation on that vernal pool, on that potential vernal pool regardless. They noted during the initial delineation that there were watermarks that indicated that it may get to a depth of 6 inches at maximum, but when they evaluated it in April during a non-drought time of year, when vernal pools would typically be at their maximum depth and best productivity, there was only 2 inches of standing water. As such, it would not be able to hold water for a consecutive 2 months during the springtime, which is a criteria for a vernal pool to ensure that there is adequate breeding area and habitat for reptile and amphibian species. So we do have a couple of action items that we do recommend. LEC in their executive summary and wetland reports did recommend that the applicant submit an ANRAD, which is abbreviated Notice of Resource Area Delineation. That is a separate filing that would go to the Conservation Commission for them to evaluate the wetland limits and the delineation, confirm it, and then that would get recorded at the Registry of Deeds and then be valid for 3 years. Alternatively, we do recommend that if they were not to do that, that the applicant engage a third party to peer review the wetlands located on the project site for all wetlands, wetlands A, B, C, and D. We want to confirm that the wetland flagging from the delineation in 2023 remains in serviceable and readable condition for any peer reviewer to evaluate that wetland delineation. Jeff and myself, we were over at the site briefly this afternoon. And at least at wetland B, it looked like most of the flags are missing, and the ones that are present are sun bleached and there's no writing that's legible on them. So that would need to be reflagged prior to any peer review or review by the Conservation Commission for the delineation. As part of that, it would be valuable for TRC to be provided with the applicable wetland determination data sheets. When doing delineation, there are data sheets that are done that detail the vegetation, the hydrology, and the soil characteristics of these wetlands, basically to prove that this area is a wetland or is an upland. And that would be valuable data to provide TRC.
So you have 10 minutes left.
Yes. As most of these wetlands, only wetlands A, C, and D are only jurisdictional, are not jurisdictional under the Wetlands Protection Act. For the sake of clarity, it would be useful to remove the 100-foot buffer zone layers from those plans to just specify which wetlands and buffer zones are protected under protected and jurisdictional under the Wetlands Protection Act. And Once that is done, and it was mentioned earlier, they will need to file a notice of intent with the Harwich Conservation Commission for them to review and approve this work associated with the 40B project. And that would go through a separate public hearing process. And then for rare species, LEC did mention that they generated an IPAC evaluation. We generated our own. That's through the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. It's an online tool. And that disclosed that there is potential habitat for 4 species of concern: the northern long-eared bat, which is listed as endangered; the tricolored bat, which is proposed endangered; the monarch butterfly, proposed endangered; and the sandplain gerardia, which is endangered. We did also evaluate the site using Max Mapper to determine if there was any priority habitat of any rare species. There is not, and as such, there is no need for state review through Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program for this site. So one functionality that the IPAC has that we have not used yet is you can incorporate the project details into it. We have just been putting in the site limits, the site bounds, not what the project actually is. Once the final project is finalized and we have the full scope, that information can be inputted into the IPAC, and that can generate some site-specific recommendations for compliance and to protect habitat of these species. Additionally, one of the recommendations that we have is to conduct an on-site wildlife habitat assessment to evaluate microhabitat that may be suitable for species. For example, northern long-eared bat and the tricolored bat, they find habitat that's near wetlands, in trees and snags with exfoliating bark, cracks, crevices, and or cavities, so that they may roost in those areas, and those are very valuable habitats for these species, and those may be a consideration to keep those trees and snags and work around them. So that covers what the wetlands and rare species peer review that we have from TRC, and yeah, we welcome any questions or comments from the board and from the public.
I have a question. With regard to the Wetlands Act, is the fact that the Cape is in Harwich, town of Harwich, at least 5+ years below? And the town of Harwich below 5 inches of rainwater? Is that included in this information?
No, so when wetlands are delineated, it is, so the 3 topics that are considered when delineating are hydrology, vegetation, and soils. So each of those are characteristic those become specifically characteristic of wetlands because it is a trend over time. So it does account for differences between years. So, for example, you would only get certain soils if they are inundated with under wetland conditions for multiple years, and then certain plant species would only be able to grow under those conditions, such as skunk cabbage. So, regardless of the amount of rain that it receives.
All right, thank you.
All right, so I have a few questions. First of all, one of the waivers that's being requested is requirements, and Jeff, you want to grab a seat in the mic. Requirement to appear and submit an NPDES notice of intent, as well as with stormwater management, the stormwater permit application, they consider not applicable. Now, report from VHB, excuse me, is that there are federal requirements that when you disturb over 5 acres of land, that these, permitting process is required. First of all, you can explain what those permits are for, so everyone understands it. And what's your theme here as far as, this board granting that waiver?
Okay, now is the waiver related to stormwater permitting, or is it related to some of the, is it the construction general permit and the stormwater pollution prevention plan? That that's related to?
I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
Applicant, can you comment on that, what you're looking for regarding your waiver for NPDES?
Mr. Chairman, while they're doing that, can I ask Ryan a quick question? You talked about, should we have a peer review, should we have a peer review? I need to be clear. I thought your firm was our peer review.
That is for something that was out of scope. We were hired to peer review the evaluations that were done by LEC. We were not hired, the scope did not include a review of the wetland delineation itself.
Okay, well, actually, while they're looking that up, Peter, did you get my question?
Yes, we were just looking at it. I believe the one you're asking about is the requirement to file the federal NIPD's application notice of intent. Our point is that very unusually, one of the bylaws locally requires that it be filed with the town, in this case, presumably prior to the end of the permitting under our 40B process. We simply say it's premature. Of course we're going to do it, we have to do it, but we're asking for a waiver because it's not done at this stage.
So you're looking to waiver from the town, but you're still going to follow through with that?
Absolutely.
State. Thank you. Regarding the flow of water on the site, as well as consideration of the water tables. So far, all the testing's been done with the virgin property.
Correct.
Once the site starts being leveled, trees are removed, etc., root systems are removed, and at some point you have a number of foundations throughout the site. Can that have an impact, you feel, on the groundwater on the site, and it's particularly the flow of the groundwater?
I would say yes. I mean, the one thing I think with their design from both a stormwater basis and a wastewater basis is all of that water is going to be kept local. So the intent, as I understand it, with the stormwater is to be really re-infiltrating that into the ground. There's a couple aspects that may change it then is obviously rather than widespread infiltration of that water, you're going to have some of that water focused in certain areas to be infiltrated. The other aspect, if you want to think about this, is they're going to be obtaining their drinking water from the town. So they're actually going to be bringing some additional water onto the property that will then be worked through the wastewater system and then re-infiltrated on the property as well. So that could also have some effect on the recharge nature on the property. But the quantity of water on the property that they're re-infiltrating, and again, something they'll have to kind of assess, should be fairly similar to pre. It's just, it will be infiltrated in different areas of the site, obviously due to the presence of roadways, buildings, things of that sort.
So, help me out here. Regarding during standard permitting processes and so forth, whether it's a town, particularly in this case the state, will the state be overseeing and looking at that and see at what point a hydrologist needs to reevaluate the site regarding the stormwater management as well as the sewer system, septic system?
So, stormwater management is something that TRC is looking at. That still is underway. We had some follow-up questions that came in that they're still looking at. So our stormwater report is still outstanding. So Rainey Gagnon, one of our civil engineers, is looking at stormwater in detail. So we will have more comments focused on that. The stormwater design will have to take into account the Massachusetts state stormwater standards and the requirements of the handbook. But my understanding, and Randy knows this better, is there's not necessarily a permit that's required, but they have to design to those standards. Typically, that is overseen by one of the town bodies as to whether that development, whether that design meets those requirements. But again, Randy would know that in much more detail, and that should come out in our stormwater peer review.
I guess my question is, what required oversight should there be regarding the virgin piece of land? With after 1,000 trees are taken down, and the site is leveled, and how that may impact the water flow, and how we ensure the fact that things are handled properly through some sort of oversight and permitting process.
Mr. Chairman, may I interject here? So we've designed the stormwater system to meet so we have to meet pre and post development conditions.
Okay.
So we select study points, they're called, and we review what before the site's been developed, and then after. And then we assess, and we cannot increase from the post development, pre and post has to match. And then I would just say for recharge, we are utilizing the natural areas on the site where the depressions, where they were likely recharging water anyway. So we're trying to incorporate that into the project.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from board members? All right, any final comments? Any folks? Obviously, can't stand by because I'm sure there's going to be questions later from people. Yes. Next on the agenda is to hear from Andy Selsky from the Harwich Conservation Agent. Want me to turn that podium around for you, Andy?
I think I have a better idea. Or a different idea, I should say. Does this work?
Absolutely.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Amy Sowski. I'm the Conservation Administrator for the town of Harwich. To begin, I'm going to try to make things a little bit easier. There's a lot of terminology and stuff going on here today, all very important. But I just want to make sure that everybody has a chance to really understand what we're talking about. So to begin, I think it's important to state what jurisdiction myself and the Harwich Conservation Commission have on the project. Hopefully this isn't impacting the sound here. I'll stand a little bit farther back so I'm not right in the way of the fan. According to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, any wetland as defined under its regulations and 100 feet from those wetlands and 200 feet from a river, a couple things to keep track of here, is under the jurisdiction of the state of Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection and the Conservation Commissions. Generally, DEP relies on review of projects within jurisdiction under the Wetlands Protection Act by town staff such as myself and our local Conservation Commission. The proposed Pine Oaks 4 project is a 40B project, and as such is subject to review under the Wetlands Protection Act of the state and its regulations, but not under our local wetland bylaw. The project site contains the following wetland types: isolated wetlands, as we talked about, isolated depressions, bordering vegetative wetlands, where there's another wetland in play, a vernal pool, and riverfront area. In preparation for this meeting tonight, I reviewed all the documents that were before you and discussed tonight, and these are some of my comments and some of my suggestions to you. So also to note, the Conservation Commission has had access to all of these documents, but as they as a commission should have to review this project under the State Act at a public hearing itself, They have not formally commented on it, and they can't without it being formally applied to them and in front of a public hearing. So this is the first step. So some people have asked, why hasn't conservation come first? Because it's according to state law that this has to come first, this process here tonight. Okay. So as stated in both the LEC executive summary and the TRC peer review, the applicant should file what we call an ANRAD application with the Conservation Commission. What this application will do is confirm the wetland lines. We're looking at wetland lines prepared by the applicant and looked at by LEC, and then the written report studied by our consultant TRC. But this would require another review of the exact edge of wetland lines. If we're not sure of the exact edge of wetland lines, and they're professionals, I am sure that they're correct or very close to, it's hard to say what buffer zones, what other jurisdiction you might have from them, and what portions of the project might lie within jurisdiction. That once these wetland delineations are confirmed, that the applicant file a notice of intent with Mass DEP and Harwich Conservation Commission for work in the buffer zones of the wetlands and the riverfront area. The Horsley Way group has stated that they will be filing with the Conservation Commission for work within its jurisdiction. I suggest that they minimize intrusion into the 100-foot buffer zone to the wetlands to the greatest extent feasible. The site is very well naturally vegetated. I've been to the site a number of times. There's a variety of native plant species there. There are some invasives, particularly in the area of wetland C, and I would suggest that the applicant consider removing those invasive plant species and replanting with natives as a form of some mitigation. It's primarily Japanese knotweed and Phragmites, which are particularly aggressive, and if left to continue, will threaten to colonize more of the site. Okay, I'm almost done. The following comments on the project are not directly related to the Masters Wetlands Protection Act, but are environmental in nature and are things for you to consider. Many of these comments are echoed by memos from LEC, BHB, and TRC. While this is not mapped priority or estimated habitat by the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program, and what that means is that the state, let me back up a little bit. The state has areas that are mapped as priority or estimated habitat for some rare species. Only small sections of the town are actually mapped as such. This area is not mapped as such under the state, but it might be suitable for specific endangered, threatened, or rare species according to a preliminary response by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This applicant is required to determine if the project will have any impact on these species. The project is located within the Herring River Marine Discharge Area, a nitrogen-sensitive watershed that is subject to a total maximum daily load of nitrogen. They're going to need to file for a groundwater discharge permit with DEP and demonstrate there will not be an increase in nitrogen loading into the Herring River as a result of this project. I did want to state, because earlier we were talking about Sand Pond being directly pretty much south of this project, and that it is likely that groundwater is flowing south or southwest. Sand Pond has started to have algae blooms in the past few years. These have been documented by the State Department of Environmental Protection, the Association of Reserve Cape Cod, and my department in its testing. Just talked about direction of groundwater flow. The direction will need to be established to definitively established with a hydrogeologic study. At this time, we can assume it's south to southwest. And my last point was to design for more than a 25-year storm event. They have done so. They've designed for at least a 50. I'd just like to say that we are seeing more and more of these heavy downpour rain events that overwhelm existing stormwater infrastructure in town. I would be concerned if the system were designed to only deal with the minimum. They are proposing to go above. But I am concerned that systems would be overwhelmed, which leads to flooding, erosion, and possible degradation of water quality. I suggest that they keep and infiltrate all stormwater, runoff from impervious surfaces such as roofs and pavements on site. And I would just like to say that the Conservation Department is willing to discuss and provide guidance on how to make the project better.
And actually, a question to you, Amy, as well as the applicant, but I realize that the applicant, for state mandates or requirements, needs to deal with the significant buffer area. But what changes in the plans would be required to meet the most stringent codes of Harwich? And are some of these things, potentially can be done, such as, I'll ask out in a second as well, but what do you recommend as far as the key things to Harwich's goals on a 100-foot buffer area?
So if this project could be reviewed by myself and the Conservation Commission under its bylaw, we have more strict requirements for proximity of clearing and development. This project does meet that. It is the building is greater than 60 feet from the edge of a wetland at 72. However, the Wetlands Protection Act does not require mitigation for new structure or surface in 100-foot buffer zone to a wetland. The Harwich Conservation, or the Harwich Wetlands Protection Bylaw does. And it would be in the amount of 2, meaning mitigation, and 1 to new structure. So if you had 100 square feet of new impervious surface or structure within jurisdiction, two times that amount would be required to mitigate for that. But before we mitigate, we look to minimize and also pull disturbance away from wetlands. I hope that answers your question.
So basically what you're saying here is that under a normal review process, you might be requesting the applicant to be, what's the term we're trying to find, to put 200 square feet of wetland type plants and so forth someplace else in the property. Is that correct?
Particularly in a disturbed area. We're not asking you to alter already really nice buffer zone area. But as I mentioned in my memo to you, which is a public document, it should be on the ZBA packet, looking at improving the area near Wetland C by removing invasives. This is really a very isolated, it's a big spot, but it's isolated, would be a huge environmental benefit to the site and prevent future environmental degradation by those invasive species. And it's something that when we did a site walk, when the applicant was present, that I did bring up at that time.
Any questions or any comments about that at this time?
I think I would just say that the applicant is open to those mitigation, especially related to the invasive species.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do we have any questions for him? Okay. It's applicant. You folks have any questions for Amy as well, or comments?
Nothing here, no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. If you could stay in the meeting in case questions come up, I appreciate it. We're now going to hear a review on the stormwater management peer review by VHB. All yours?
Could I have allow to share with mine?
By the way, Sarah, have there been any comments regarding people who are dialed in on the audio situation?
There's a couple that have some issues, but I've been popping in and out on my phone listening to it.
All right, so far you feel it's been pretty good?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
the most part, it's been good, but a few people have had issues.
Thank you.
So,
I'm Frank DePico.
yeah, you're supposed to present.
Right, the podium is yours.
All right. Okay, is that something that folks can see? I can't turn on my share here. Wait a minute.
Could you speak into the microphone?
Sure. I'm a better engineer than someone working with a computer, I'm afraid at this point. Frank DePietro, I'm a senior engineer with PhD, and is there an echo? Folks, is there an echo? Okay. We provided 2 peer reviews, responses back from the folks that mostly written. We received a 32-page peer review Monday. The good news is we went through that and we basically narrowed that down to about 7 pages of responses. And really there's 4 categories. And the categories really where our comments have been addressed fully. We didn't need to go on with that. There were comments where the applicant essentially has addressed them, but they need to do things to finalize them. An example of that would be, we talked about the lighting plan. And they're showing the lighting from the site. They're not including, because it's not been designed yet, lighting that will be reflected off of the buildings. So when they do have the building plans, they'll have an updated photometric plan for the site. That's something that should be conditioned. That's not quite available. The other 2 responses where the comments have been addressed. We don't have any further comments. We're referring the final decision to the ZBA. We can talk about those. And the last, basically, where the applicant has indicated that they will be willing to accept a condition as part of potential approval from the ZBA to address that specific comment. So it's a general type items, and just specifically go to the stormwater. So really a couple of items there. We noted that as part of the review comments previously, we'd asked to look at the 50-year design. They have previously done that, and we've reviewed it. The system has been indicated that it will handle a 50-year design storm. That is the town's standard requirement. There was a waiver request not to address that. That may want to be modified, but again, you may want to formally accept that there's calculations that address a 50-year design storm. And I think
They commented tonight, they're going over 50 years.
All right, we've done that already, we reviewed it, makes sense. It just maybe needs to be formally incorporated to any decisions of the day.
Yeah, good idea.
Also, we've talked a little bit about the NIPD stormwater approval. That is a part of the EPA, federal government construction general permit. Any disturbance of 5 acres or more for a construction project is required to file that application. It is typically based upon the construction documents, and in fact, under the EPA, you're not supposed to start construction unless you have filed for that permit. So, they're not at a construction plan at this point in the stage of the game. They've got phases and stuff. Again, the recommendation would be that there be a condition that says a NIPD's application will be filed, copied with the town before any construction starts. That may be something that the Conservation Commission may also include in their recommendations. As part of that filing, there is something called the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. It essentially addresses erosion and sedimentation control measures to be implemented throughout the project. It's typically about this thick, and there are weekly inspections that are part of the federal program. So again, we would recommend that that be a condition of any approval from the EPA that says prior to start of construction. Not only is the application have to file with the federal government, but they provide to the town a copy of their NIPD's application and their stormwater pollution prevention plan.
Who oversees that during construction?
So, typically the applicant or the contractor hires somebody that will be involved in maybe weekly inspections, for example, or someone to go out there, write a written report, provide those written reports, and again, that could be to the town conservation, ZBA, whoever, and also have them available in a document that's on the site, kept up to date, in case the EPA ever sends anybody out to inspect it. They have in the past, and there were situations where they've done that. If you haven't kept it up, you could be fined pretty heavily. So most people do keep things up.
And that's governed by the state or federal?
It's actually governed by the federal government.
Is there any jurisdiction, on a normal situation, it comes under the Board of Selectmen to oversee the stormwater triple piece?
And I don't take an issue if you folks wanted to put a provision in there that said that copies of any weekly reports or the SWIFT application and NIPD's application be provided to the town. It is an online thing at the EPA, and it is the system to see that.
Then if the town's concerned, they notify the EPA.
That's correct. And again, depending on what the conservation does, there may be some jurisdiction under local bylaw as well with regard to that. The other comments we had on stormwater were really pretty much addressed. One item that we would recommend the commission, the ZBA included in their conditions is copies of the applications and permits they get. So things like if they file something with the Conservation Commission, they file something with the DPW or stuff like that, that a copy of any of those permits, they file something with the state or the federal government, those be included as part of the backup material that are in your files through a permit condition of approval.
Would those be going to the building inspector or?
It could be. I mean, typically the building inspector's jurisdiction is more limited to physically meeting the international mass building code, those type of things. These would be things like ongoing maintenance. As part of your stormwater pollution prevention plan, you have to go, someone's gone out to the site, they've seen that in this area the hay bales are now worn down or truck drove over them, they need to be replaced. They have been replaced. In the next inspection, you report that that's been done. And so those ongoing reports could be provided to whether it be the Conservation Commission, the ZBA, whatever. Typically it's the Conservation Commission to get those kind of things if they have jurisdiction.
Amy, do you see your department having jurisdiction or checking out the bills of hay on the property? Or how does that work?
I apologize, Mr. Chair, I'm checking the erosion controls.
Okay, yes.
So it is typically a condition in the orders of conditions that the conservation would issue if this project were to go through, that we would have on-site pre-construction and routine throughout construction site visits to ensure that, among other things, that erosion controls would be maintained and functioning.
Moving on to the non-stormwater related items.
Yes, sir.
So there are a number of items that we noted that need to have follow-up. And again, some of them I've talked about, they're not related to stormwater. These would be in filings with other town agencies. For example, there was a comment that the fire department had agreed verbally that the turning radius on the site for their fire ladder was acceptable. We would suggest that that be provided in writing, again, part of the record for the ZBA to make a decision. It's already been brought up, but again, meeting with some of the state criteria, the nitrogen loading, for example, that's something that's going to be followed up on. The stormwater projects, the wastewater treatment plant permit, and that just should be put into your folks' binder fuel for all the conditions that these were addressed, just so you have a complete set of all the permits that are required on the federal, state, and local level.
How is nitrogen discharge checked? On a monthly basis, and what happens if all of a sudden it exceeds requirements, repeats maximum requirements?
So there should be some ongoing standards requiring review of the wastewater going into their wastewater treatment facility.
Is that done by our water department?
No, that, I would presume, again, I haven't seen the
Mr. Chair, I can clarify if you'd
Thank
like. The groundwater discharge permit will have monitoring requirements in the monitoring wells that are installed around the disposal beds. So they'll be checked usually on a quarterly basis. And if it exceeds for a certain time, they'll come out and issue a notice of non-compliance usually, and pursue getting you back into compliance.
Who gets those reports?
That would be the owner of the property.
And they'll be required to present those reports to whom?
So everything is submitted to DP. So there'll be an operator who operates the wastewater plant, and their job will be to make sure it's operating properly, and they will also be doing all the sampling associated with that. There'll be sampling of the actual effluent from the plant and sampling of the monitoring wells surrounding it. Typically monthly for the plant, and then quarterly for the monitoring wells.
All right, and those go to the...
That all goes to the DP, and they oversee the enforcement of the permit.
Thank you.
One of the items I think that should be something that is an ongoing concern would be the maintenance. So we've got some wonderful designs, stormwater, pollution attenuation, stormwater control. If they're not maintained, those systems tend to not operate. In particular, for example, you've got a lot of large basins on the site that in fact groundwater recharge. If the site has not been checked over time, fines can get in there, maybe they get a little bit less permeable, could hold water for a longer period of time. So ongoing maintenance of the drainage system and other operating systems, things like, for example, snow removal, those type of things that are being proposed by the project need to be monitored in some kind of manner, whether they're kept at the site, at the maintenance office, whether they're provided to some agency in the town, just so that information is available, can be checked and verified over a long period of time. Maintenance is being done, and that would require that whoever operates it, whether it's the owner or there's some management who has that information, understands what they've got to do to make sure the systems are working appropriately over time. The only other items that we had really related to coordination with future work. So, for example, there's been a discussion that I've agreed that they will coordinate with Queen Anne Road as a sidewalk. So again, we would recommend a condition in approval that says, if and when the town gets to the point has improvements on the sidewalk, the folks at this project already said they wanted to agree to assist in that. That should be made as part of any approvals of the subject. Thank you.
I'm afraid you to wrap up in the next 3 minutes.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
I think that's basically it. We have to take any questions. Be happy to sit down and move on.
Folks, any questions for? I guess one question which, and also Jeff brought up, was use of salts, and I guess that also comes into the use of fertilizers and so forth. What other plans regarding using more organic type, less problematic fertilizers on the property, as well as use of alternates to salt?
Yeah, I think there's no issue with complying with something like that. And I would think the actual fertilized landscape area would be very minimal. Does that answer your question?
I guess so. So those are salt alternative for the roadways.
Salt, yes. Yeah, yes, that's fine. I don't think that's an issue to comply with.
We would consider using organic fertilizers as opposed to, stuff that we're
Correct.
not supposed to use.
Correct. And that contributes obviously to the nitrogen loading, so that was an important thing to minimize.
Okay, any further questions or comments from Yes, okay. Can you stand by? Is there maybe other comments, questions? Okay. Somebody watch this at one meeting? Okay. I guess we're also now going to site and civil design peer review by VHB. Have you guys down for 5 minutes?
To be very brief, I pretty much touched on the site civil stuff in my previous comments, but with any specific comments on the other site civil, besides stormwater, I'm happy to provide.
I guess my only comment, and we'll deal with this perhaps later, but is on the site plan, if VHB could clarify your opinion regarding 20-foot roadways and 8 or 9 foot parallel parking. Because in a reading your report, at one point in the report, it seems to say, yeah, we're okay with it. In another section, it states it differently.
So that relates, 2 different people writing 2 different sections. In the traffic memorandum, I think they talked about the 8-foot, 20-foot right-of-ways, travelers being okay. As a site civil person, I have a little bit of a different opinion. The applicant, and of course the witness, provided all kinds of data from various very good studies around the country and the state. I happen to live right near Mashpee Commons, so I'm very familiar with that area and how the smaller sidewalks sort of go. So what I've done is I've punted and I've put it back toward the ZBA. There is data on both sides, a considerable amount of data for the 8-foot, 20-foot. The key is controlling the speeds in the area. And smaller areas do, smaller width roadways do slow down traffic. And so that's something that I think there is good data for the 8-foot and 20-foot. There's also data for 9-foot and 20-foot roadway. I'm deferring to the traffic folks that would allow 8-foot by 20-foot roadway cross section.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
As I promised at the last meeting, I did contact Pine Hills, because it was commented to me that this is going to be the same setup that Pine Hill uses. Pine Hills is also, I spoke to the engineer, they've been on board since day one. PHP is actually their site engineer as well. And they confirmed that they use 20-foot roads on the non-connected roads, but they use 9-foot, not 8-foot for parallel parking. And they wouldn't consider 8-foot for parallel parking. So just want to throw that back and a comment from you folks on it.
Sure, yeah, I would be happy to comment. I think the key component is we're trying to design this with the narrower roads because we have a neighborhood design. We want to promote slower traffic. This isn't a highway. We want to see people, we have a set speed limit of 15 miles an hour. That's what we're expecting. And we want to make sure that a safe speed is maintained. And I think some of those documents that we had submitted are pretty clear that they do, narrower roads will promote slower speeds and are actually safer. I think there's an extensive study there from John Hopkins, a huge document that actually says that there's evidence that the wider roads actually have more probability of accidents. And it's just because the wider roads, people decide they want to drive faster. So I think that one of the concerns was related to, people opening their doors and getting instructions. But I think that the whole key is controlling the speed. And when someone opens their door to get in and out, they're not. If you're going slower, you can react to that situation. So again, this is a neighborhood design. We're shooting for something that's a community where people are driving slowly, and we're pretty confident and pretty adamant that this is kind of how we'd like to do it. So that's kind of where we stand on it.
We did have one of our board members came that went out and measured in downtown Harwich. Discovered the fact that right there near the town hall in that area were 20-foot roads and parallel parking was closer to 8 feet than 9.
And I think the Mashpee Commons is a good example because they currently have built areas that are 8-foot parallel, 20-foot wide roads, but they also have an approved 40B, similar, residential, that'll have the exact same footprint, 8-foot parallel parking with 20-foot roadways.
Thank you. Okay, next but not least, Christine Flynn, Director of Planning and Community Development for the town. She's going to speak regarding the planning board's, members of the planning board's discussion, as well as her own thoughts regarding the project.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. The planning board after last meeting, and last week's meeting did discuss at last week's planning board meeting, members did discuss particular aspects and issues regarding the Pine Oaks Village 4 project, as well as I did give them an overview of the parameters of the comprehensive permit law and some of the responsibilities regarding some of the responsibilities of the Zoning Board of Appeals. As part of our discussion, we did go over stormwater. We did also touch on traffic and as well as general site design. And the planning board will submit a letter at their next from their next meeting, hopefully prior to the October 15th public hearing for the ZBA. Speaking as the planning director, I did go over a couple of items that I would recommend. And, starting off, the town's affordable and attainable housing needs are well documented. The proposed project is consistent with the 2025 housing production plan, as well as the 2025 final draft local comprehensive plan. And the project also meets the Cape Cod Commission's regional policy plan, Cape Cod Regional Policy Plan's housing goals and objectives. And the project also surpasses the requirements of the comprehensive permit in terms of the 25% requirement for affordable housing units. So I did want to clarify that. And as part of the planning board's purview, normally for multifamily projects, the planning board is the special permit granting authority. And as part of multi-family special permits, site plan review is also a requirement. And as part of site plan review, our site plan review, the planning board is charged with looking at issues of parking, traffic, public safety, stormwater management, landscaping, lighting, site design, as well as community character. And regarding the project, the following are just some of the highlighted issues that I did raise in my report to the board. It's also available on the town's website. Regarding parking and road safety, we did discuss with VHB regarding the waiver for the 8-foot width parallel parking and the road layout at 20 feet. We did recommend, or I'm recommending that the board consider granting that waiver. I think there are numerous benefits in terms of reducing impervious surfaces for the overall project. That's a benefit for stormwater management, as well as environmental implications in water quality. The other issues also pertain to overall traffic and the reduction of reduced speeds. It is noted, and this issue has been studied for narrow roads. Sorry about that. It has been studied by many planning agencies, and as best practices to have narrower roads create self-managed traffic calming measures. And it is noted that there is a reduction in overall speed. And that's a benefit for public safety to this project. So for stormwater, we are pleased to hear that the applicant is addressing the 50-year storm. And I would also echo VHB's recommendation relative to the operations and maintenance and implementation, as well as periodic reporting to the town. For water quality, even though this is beyond the purview of the planning board, the Cape Cod Commission in their letter did highlight that the Herring River watershed is a nitrogen impaired watershed. And again, we do understand that DEP will be evaluating the wastewater discharge permit, and we would also echo the recommendation that the applicant provide periodic reports, or as the applicant goes through the filing process, that they communicate that with the town. And in terms of traffic, the town's peer review consulting team has done an extensive and thorough evaluation of traffic impacts, so I don't want to get into the details on the traffic issues. However, what I would recommend is that the project presents a critical opportunity for the town relative to the existing traffic conditions along Queen Anne Road. And I would strongly recommend that the ZBA accept any offers of the applicant to work with the town to address those traffic issues overall. And I think whether it's grant writing or just working with the town, because this is going to be over several years. This project is going to take at least, it's going to be developed over 5 years, and I mean over 5 phases, and that's at least at a minimum 10 years. So I think it's critical that we partner, that the town partners with the applicant in terms of working with state agencies, doing grant funding, and to doing any improvements, particularly for pedestrian safety along Queen Anne Road for not only pedestrians but bicyclists. And that was also recommended by the Cape Cod Commission. And the Cape Cod Commission has done several traffic safety analysis for the Queen Anne Road, and they did recommend additional engineering work be done for that area. And I think this is also another opportunity to look at the intersections of Main Street and Queen Anne Road. And if there's any improvements that can be made, this is a very good opportunity to work with the applicant to do that. One last recommendation, the planning department would also recommend that after phase 2, the applicant consider improving the emergency access road to an actual collector road. It was noted in VHB's traffic study that if there was a second access point from Main Street to the project site, there could be a potential reduction of overall traffic from Queen Anne Road by at least 10%. In terms of lighting and landscaping, the applicant has not submitted their lighting plan, but I would echo VHB's recommendation that any conditions as part of the lighting plan should be part of the decision. But the applicant has acknowledged in discussions that they would submit the lighting plan and that any lighting would be dark sky compliant and no lighting would trespass their property of the project's property. And finally, the relocation of the child care facility is a positive improvement for overall public safety. And it also promotes multi-generational opportunities for all of the residents to spend some time together and have some interactions and possible activities for those residents. And I think quality of life for those residents is of critical importance. We want to make sure that certain safety as well as interaction is encouraged. And I think the design for the community center and the child care center, I think, presents a very unique opportunity to do that. It's also recommended that the building massing for some of the lodge buildings, the Cape Cod Commission did recommend that some of the architectural designs could break up the building massing a little bit more, so I would recommend that to the zoning board of appeals as well in your deliberations as a possible condition. And it is also recommended that aging in place and universal design standards be considered in any of the architectural designs going forward. And thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you have any questions, I'm available to answer any questions the board may have.
Paul, thank you, Christine. Any questions from the board?
Okay. I just want to ask one question that I think was asked a couple of weeks ago. It's not actually directly related to Christine's comments, which I appreciate, but the shy list, which I know is sort of a moving target. Were the town to actually achieve the 10%, how many units approximately, say within about 25 units, is the town short of achieving the state's goals?
This project the town is currently at 328 units on the shy list, which is at 4.98%. Because this is a rental development, the comprehensive permit allows the town to count all rental units, regardless if they're affordable or at higher income tiers. And so 242, sorry, I need to do a little bit of math here.
Approximately.
Is 570, and that gets us up to 8.3%. And or 10%, it's probably approximately 650 units.
So right now, we're about 325 short.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mike?
On that topic, I know that there are other projects that are in development for the town of Harwich. How do those play into to the figures that you just gave us? As far as meeting goals?
In terms of meeting goals, the town is facilitating a friendly 40B application at this time at 456 Queen Anne Road. That will add 60 units, so that will help the town achieve the 10%. I do want to double check on the math just to make sure that's correct, so I don't want to speak out of turn.
Yeah, we'd be about 7 units short. After that development.
Thank you.
Any questions, gentlemen?
I just wanted to clarify one thing. I believe we submitted a photometric, but we just need to update it with the building lighting to show that all the walkways and stairs are, so I just want to make sure that I think that was received.
All right, thank you. Before going on public comment period, before we go need to break. Okay. Well, folks, it's now public comment time. As in the past, we will request a limit of 3 minutes per speaker per time. And if there's ample time throughout the end of the period, a speaker can come back up and speak a second time to complete their opinion. As discussed in the beginning, I would appreciate first having those step forward that have questions and comments regarding, the environmental and stormwater management and conservation issues. And after those comments those people have that opportunity, then I would entertain questions and comments on other subjects. Okay? So there is I'll go down there, I'm going to turn this podium around. Well, thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
There is a pen and a piece of paper for when you do approach the podium. You can write your name down and address. Would be appreciated. So first, I see a show of hands of how many folks here would like to make a comment regarding conservation and environmental issues. I see 1, 2, 3. Okay. So 4. So Amy's going to jump in as well. So please step up to the mic. Perhaps go first, and then we'll see those, and we'll open it up to other questions and comments. And if each person could identify themselves and of course fill that form out, I'd appreciate it, and we'll give you a 30-second warning regarding getting close to 3 minutes. But we do have an hour, so I do anticipate that, second shot at speaking will be available. Hopefully cover most of your questions here tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. Patrick Otten, East Harwich. What is in the name Goldman Sachs? Is that gold? Apple? Are they dealing with apples? Caterpillar Corporation. Are they dealing with insects? How about pine oaks? Are they really interested in pines and oaks? Pines are native to Cape Cod and are an important habitat species. Oaks of significant ecological importance, supporting more life forms than any other North American tree genus, over 400 plus species. Is this what the proposed POV4 is doing, supporting the natural world? Absolutely not, no. The proposed POV4 is a Herring River watershed already suffering from human development. POV4 will continue the degradation of water quality, not only from human waste, but also from applied fertilizers, pesticides, from runoff of impermeable surfaces, and a lack of trees and natural vegetation to ensure groundwater absorption. There are over 453 native plant species and animal species under the protected under the Massachusetts Endangered Species Act. Unfortunately, the proposed POV4 land is private and not open for public review. But here are some of the species that I've seen in the area: eastern box turtles, snapping turtles, peeper, green frogs, in a vernal pool, great horned owls, raccoons, towhee, turkeys, herons, lady slippers. All of these will be lost. How about POV letting the state do a walkthrough? Is that possible? Let's look at the value of nature in terms of what you may understand, and that's money. A simplified approach. Let's look at the value of trees. Let's look at the numbers. 300 acres, approximately 500 trees per acre. The town of Mashpee requires payment of trees that are cut down of $3,000 for each tree greater than 20 inches in diameter. The rough calculation yields $45 million. That's $45 million of trees. Is Pine Oaks willing to pay that sum? No. Pine Oaks, Mr. Dunn, prefers instead to profit from nature. You are not interested in the benefits of nature for human mental or physical health, nor are you interested in nature's health. If built, POV4 will persist into the future.
30 seconds, sir.
Are people 100 years from now going to be considered what a wonderful project POV4 is? Perhaps even designated as historical significant with a long-term impact on our environment? POV4 is impacting the character of Harwich, shifting it from a wooded rural to built-out urban, destroying the values of why we live here. POV will have a significant negative impact on the environment. Please, ZBA 4, do not enable POV4. Please follow Governor Maura Healey's Biodiversity Conservation in Massachusetts order. Think about what Cape Cod is today and what Cape will be in 50, 100 years. When, where, and when do you want to be living? Thank you.
Appreciate comments. Next up, who'd like to speak? Okay, Amy, thank you.
I'll be very brief. Amy Sowski, Conservation Administrator. I have a question for really any of the engineering consultants. What is the lifespan of a permeable reactive barrier?
I can estimate they can last up to 20 years, and then they have to be reestablished.
Could you briefly describe the process of reestablishing them?
So from what I understand, they're injection wells into the groundwater spaced at a certain interval to form a barrier in the water table. So that's how they're installed. And then there's no casing or anything like that left over. It's just a borehole with the injection and then move on to the next space. So, if we did pursue something like that, we would be working with a specialized consultant who designs these, so we have to do some more additional research and design to actually nail down all the details that you mentioned there. But from the initial discussions, they can last up to 20 years.
Thank you.
And if I could just add to that, the key of having a longer life with these type of facilities is maintenance. So you need to have an annual maintenance program that goes through, make sure they're not getting clogged up, make sure there's not issues. That will extend the life to 20 years or or whatever.
That being commented upon, is there a maintenance schedule that's being considered by Pine Oak Village?
I mean, that would be all stipulated in the groundwater discharge permit.
We'll welcome the next person to speak. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sherry Stockdale. So my understanding is that the estimated wastewater flow is less than 10,000 gallons per day by only 100 gallons, which is like 4 loads of laundry. And that is the basis for not having to install a wastewater treatment facility in the first phases. That seems pretty close. Just like some of these almost endangered animals seems pretty close. So, good job helping that along. At one time, the Title V system was considered the gold standard. However, it no longer represents the best available technology. From this, we can extrapolate that what is considered cutting edge today will be faulted tomorrow. There is no perfect wastewater system that could protect the Herring River from Pine Oaks Bore. The system that is spoken of for phase 1 is said to remove 65% of the nitrogen. I don't see how that is enough, considering the nitrogen problems that we're having. Also, the asphalt that the developers plan to lay would be equal to the footprints of the 10 massive buildings themselves. To get a sense of how much asphalt they're talking about, please visit Marconi Beach in Wellfleet. And you can see that it would be 450 parking spaces would cover between 3 and 4.5 acres with asphalt. Nothing can live on asphalt. That's just death to nature. The developers seek waivers for fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, and rodenticides. All of these are known dangers to turtles and amphibians, not to mention bees and the struggling herring population that's part of the Herring River. In addition, we know that poisons are transferred through the food chain and kill birds of prey, such as the many species of owls and hawks that thrive in the area. If an owl or a hawk eats a mouse that has ingested poison, the poison will be transferred to the bird. This goes for all predator-prey combinations, such as fox, coyote, osprey, etc. Consider what the introduction of domestic animals to the site would mean. The promotional flyers that the developers sent to every Harwich resident seem to be encouraging pets. The flyer depicts large breed dogs, a Dalmatian and a Labrador Retriever to be precise. Would cats also be allowed? Where would dogs and cats defecate? Would cats be allowed outside, endangering what is left of the wildlife? I also have to refute what was said about the
30 seconds.
about the Harwich's Housing Production Plan 2025. POV does not meet the criteria. That plan specifically states that the housing should be spread throughout the town. Pine Oaks Village 4 would be one of 3 that are coming online now, all within 3 miles in North Harwich. And I also refute the fact that an extensive traffic study was done. A 2-day traffic study is not adequate for an area that is sandwiched between 3 industrial zones. And recommending an exit onto Main Street would mean land taking by eminent domain, and I really can't believe that our town planner is recommending that people give up their land by eminent domain so that this can be brought into existence.
Thank you, Chair. Do we have another speaker, please? And while the next speaker is coming up, I'd just like to please sign in. You can respond to the comments regarding pesticides and so forth that may be used on site, how we can prevent some of the problems that might be caused by these pesticides. Okay. Wait, one moment, sir. I didn't see a written question. I just want to ask the applicant to respond to the question regarding pesticides, whether it's a waiver or not.
So Sorry, Mr. Chairman, what was the question?
When the last speaker was speaking, Sherry, she brought up the impact that can be there regarding everyone's use of pesticides, not just Pine Oaks, but given the location of Herring River, she asked a question regarding, the planned use of pesticides in the property and what other types of pesticides or remediating factors can be done instead of the chemicals that can harm animals.
But I don't have the answer, but I can definitely look into it, and we can maybe get back to you at the next hearing.
All right, thank you very much.
Chairman, if I could?
Sure.
I'd like to clarify. I'm looking at a list of waivers. To the applicant, please. Did you request a waiver for any pesticide, herbicide, or any of those things?
I'm not aware of that.
I didn't see
it. No.
I don't have anything in writing to that effect. That's why I'm asking the question.
We can look through the waiver list and confirm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sir, thanks for waiting.
Yes,
Your name, please.
it says it's not on. I mean, it's on the island, but it's not on. Is that, there you go. Temporary technical difficulty.
Testing.
Hey, okay. Yeah, Ed Trevicki guy, 448 Main Street. I'm actually speaking on behalf of my wife Christine because she's not fond of public speaking. Her comments are actually based on the assumption, since you don't know yes or no about rodenticide, whether or not it's in the
My
waiver.
research said that you did ask for a waiver for rodenticide.
Yeah.
Excuse me, one speaker at a time, please.
Yeah. Apparently, they did request, according to my wife's research, so I'll read this quickly. The town of Harwich currently has in place restrictions against the use of rodenticides. Pine Oaks Village 4 is asking for a waiver to eliminate these restrictions. Why should POB4 be afforded a waiver when the entire town must abide by this rule? And more importantly, why are they asking for it? I believe one reason is that with dense housing, rats are an issue because a single structure provides multiple rodents with easy access to ample food, water, shelter. Infestations can spread over quickly between units via shared walls and utility lines, posing a significant risk of property damage, disease transmission, and stress for residents. This would be less of an issue if the number of housing units was greatly reduced and limited to single-family homes rather than housing lodges with communal trash dumpsters. Rodenticide or rat poison poses significant dangers to pets, children, and wildlife. The most common type, anticoagulant rodenticides, cause untold suffering and fatality due to internal bleeding by preventing blood from clotting. This also leads to death for a range of non-target animals, including birds of prey like bald eagles and owls, and mammals such as foxes and coyotes, not to mention potential runoff into the groundwater and Herring River. I implore that the town not grant this waiver. The long-term ecological effects of rat poison use include severe and widespread secondary poisoning of predatory and scavenging wildlife, bioaccumulation of toxins throughout the food chain, the potential disruption of ecosystem stability. In many cases, the use of poison is an unstable solution that eliminates natural predators, which can paradoxically lead to an increase in the rodent population over time.
Thank you, Ed. Question to Amy. What department in town, is it the Board of Health or your department that oversees that type of pesticides?
Hi, Carrie Turner.
Well,
Carrie Sherner, Health Director. It's actually MDAR that oversees pesticides application. We don't have a ban currently in town. But in regards to the septic filing for the interim Title V, I just wanted to make sure to clarify that that's going through the state level and not coming at the local level for your
Yes.
phase one?
Yes, typically if they know that it's going to be a treatment plant, they'll just permit it all through the state.
Just wanted to clarify that. And with that permit process, that has the same 30-day comment period for our residents?
The groundwater discharge permit does have its own public comment period, yes. Yep.
So I did
print out instructions so everybody can sign up, so you can make your comments on the wastewater portion of their project.
Just one question then. So there isn't currently a town policy regarding antenna size. Is there a state one?
Yes, NDAR has restrictions that has to be licensed professionals and follow proper protocol.
Did you forward me as far as that regulations, you had a chance?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the original waiver request has a waiver under conservation regulations that would apply to herbicides, pesticides, rodenticide within 100 feet of a wetland, because the Conservation Commission only has jurisdiction within 100 feet of a wetland or 200 feet of a river. So it might not apply, but that is what they're asking for. Is from
I see.
100 feet of the wetland.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not realizing that. I don't think we can probably eliminate that waiver. We have no issue if it's a major issue. Yeah, we can eliminate that waiver request.
Thank you. Public speaking has an outcome. Thank you. Next up, who'd like to speak next?
Hello, do I need to sign this?
Yes.
Okay.
If you don't, there's a $5 fine, or I forget what the issue is, but there's some sort of penalty clause. Thank you very much. We'd just like to identify the record.
Okay, I'm Jim 5. I live at 49 Bakers Drive. It's about a block away from 124 and Queen Anne. And I frequently use Queen Anne, so I'm very familiar with it. All its curves and hills for hidden vehicles approaching. There's about 8 to 10 different places where you can't see much more than 100 yards ahead of you. But anyway, what I want to talk to you today is, well, this morning in the Cape Cod Times, there was a pretty long article about the fact that our coastal beaches and waters are in bad shape. And it's not unreasonable that be true, because since 1950 or 50s until now, or in the I think it's the 2020s, the population of the Cape Cod has grown fivefold. Well, in that fivefold increase of the population, our wastewater facilities have not kept up with it. So that brings us to POV4. The chosen site is on a hill overlooking Queen Anne, and down below that is the Herring River. And the Herring River does not go north from there. In fact, once it crosses it's either Main Street or continuation of Queen Anne, I'm not sure what it's called, it bends to the east. So it follows the just parallel with Queen Anne. So it doesn't get any further away than it is near the dam. And it's maybe a couple hundred yards away. So it's uphill, or POV is uphill and a couple hundred yards from the Herring River. well, that presents a problem. Every year the herring make their migration up the Herring River, thousands of them. I hope each of you have had a chance to watch that migration as they go up into Hinkley Pond. There's a fish ladder there, and you'd be impressed by the tenacity of these fish and just the spirit of them. This happens every year, and has for I don't know, hundreds of years maybe. And if that water gets polluted, and it is becoming a little bit polluted, they had a danger announcement on Hinkley Pond itself because of the cyanobacteria. But if that really becomes polluted, we will lose that herring migration, which is well, I won't go into it, but it's a wonderful thing.
30 seconds.
Not only that is the Herring River flows down into the West Reservoir. The reservoir, I assume, is the water reserved for the town of Harwich. So that Herring River is important. Well,
Jim, just a few more moments.
Is this still on?
It should be.
But is it? Can you hear me?
We'll get this fixed for you, Jim, in a second here.
Time to leave my notes.
Hey, you grab that mic and bring it up. Good?
Okay. Can you hear?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so we got it. Okay, so 30 seconds, please.
What was that?
30 seconds, please.
30 seconds? You don't count, this count, tell the little time?
I already did it. Please trust me.
Okay.
But we'll let you finish up.
Yeah, so the point, or the basic problem is POV is on this hill and dumping, well, it has no sewer pipeline, and there's no facility until maybe the 2030s. I think they're applying for money for a facility up there. And so they're going to have to come up with their own facility. And if that facility is not working well, that sewer water, and I'm not sure whether you put sewer water and surface water into one pot, or whether you separate them. I'm just going to call it sewer water, okay? So that sewer water, we live on a sandbar, so that sewer water, no matter how straight, is going to seep down into the water, and since it's on a hill overlooking the Herring River, that water is going to seep its way down into the Herring River.
Time is up, sir.
Jim, I apologize. I need to move on to the next speaker. If there's more time at the end, you're happy to finish your comments. Okay.
I'm sorry?
We need to move on to the next speaker. If there's more time at the end of the session, you can come back to the podium and finish your presentation.
Well, let me just say one thing. It's a short note. I've been made aware that in some of the requests from POV, there's a request for a waiver, I guess, and relates to the affordable houses versus the market price houses. And the waiver, or the way it's described is that they will have the affordable housing, but if after a reasonable amount of time, okay, what the hell is reasonable? For them, it might be a week. For the town, it may be 2 years. But after a reasonable amount of time, if those affordable houses are not filled, then they can go to market price homes or facilities, whatever. And if you allow that waiver as a board,
Jim, I'm sorry.
you will be creating a sham for the very purpose of the housing, the affordable housing idea.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Next, please. Who would like to speak? Thank you.
Okay, you already heard from my husband. I'm Christine from Guy. I live at 448 Main Street. I hate public speaking. So I'm going to ask you, since no one else is offering to speak, if you have 60 minutes, if you don't ping me at 3 minutes saying that I don't have enough time.
Speak into the mic. I need to keep to the regulations we established. If you don't get finished with your statement, then you can speak afterwards.
All right, well, if nobody's ready to speak after me, let me know and I'll continue. And I hope you can hear me because I'm speaking as loud as I can into this microphone. All right, this is a question for Christine on the planning board. My question is your planning department only concerned with new development, or do you also consider existing developments and neighborhoods? I heard you talk about the quality of life for the POV residents, the new residents. But what about all the existing residents in North Harwich? Other than us getting saddled with additional taxes as a result of infrastructure improvements being completed on the assumption, the wish and the prayer that grants are going to be coming through for this, or that the applicant is going to help us get these imaginary grants. How does this huge development fit in with the existing area? Is that part of your planning department also? How does this blend? Other than moving Harwich closer to its affordable housing mandate, how does this improve on the charm and historical character of the town? As an earlier speaker noted, how will this development be looked upon in retrospect in 25, 50, or 100 years? What do you want the legacy of North Harwich to be?
We have someone else who would like to speak regarding conservation and environment.
Is he not getting the answer?
The answering is not done during this time frame.
Hi, Teresa Johnson, North Harwich.
All right, Teresa.
Harwich has issued a mandatory water ban, everyone got their green sheet of paper, from May 1st to September 30th, under our current population. POV4 proposes 242 units, adding approximately 1,000 residents to Harwich. I contacted Dennis, Yarmouth, and Hyannis water departments to obtain water usage for their affordable housing developments. Hyannis had not gotten back to me prior to this meeting, but I will convey their data when I get it. The Dennis developments contain 27 units for one development, 32 units for another development. Hyannis has two developments, one with 124 units, another with 272 units. The huge thing behind BJ's. Yarmouth developments, they have 40 units, 65 units, and 150 units. Swan Pond Village in Yarmouth has 150 units.
and it used 6,779,000 gallons of water in 2023 and 6,797,500 gallons in 2024. If you were to calculate Swan Pond Village water usage to 242 units, it would be 10,936,787 gallons of water per year. Can the Monomoy Lens Aquifer in Harwich handle an additional 11 million gallons of water usage per year on top of the current demand? In the past, we've been told that their septic treatment plant wouldn't be functioning until the end of phase 2, and it would be operating on septic systems until then. The Herring River has had extensive nitrogen removal efforts, costing millions of dollars. We fear that operating this many septic systems for several years will increase the nitrogen loading in the river. Also concerned with the fertilizers, pesticides, water runoff from the buildings and parking lots contributing to the contamination of the Herring River. Is the town or the water department ever notified of a non-compliance of the wastewater testing? Please help protect the Herring River, our endangered species, and the character of Harwich. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Judy.
Good evening, thanks again for having us here. Tom Birch, Queen Anne Road, Two Properties.
If you just could sign in real quick, Tom, at some point, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
You got it. I'm going to make a little correction to her numbers. She came up with, I come up with 17 million gallons of water that's going to be brought to the town, brought to this area. That one drop of it would never be there until we pump it all there, process it with these so-called state-of-the-art treatment plants, but now we're going to have a Title V to get started. I'm not sure I could build a house in the town of Harwich and say I want to build a 5-bedroom house, but I'm going to build a 1-bedroom septic system and then see how it goes and move on down the road. Other than you want a full septic plant, you get it from start one before one person goes in there, my opinion. But it will bring 17 million gallons of water that not one drop would be on that property. One of the first meetings I came to, we asked the question, what's the water flow? The gentleman had to point turning roads from here, this project, right to there. Southwest, right to the Herring River complex. 17 million gallons are going to head there. We're mandated by the state to help clean up that river now, and now we want to add more to it. The town of Brewster is even buying rights to some of our properties to control the nitrogen going into Herring River. $241,000 is going to, I think that's the correct number, is that close to? Close. Going to our conservation department, and we're going to use it to help clean up some of our messes. But they're proactive. They're buying rights to our properties to control the nitrogen going into Herring River, yet we want to add 17 million gallons of water to flow through it. That's it.
Thank you. Yes, please, thank you.
Just to clarify, the 241,000 such dollars for the town of Brewster that they're paying, I think, for a conservation restriction, that's not going to the conservation department.
Wow, it's going somewhere.
I'm assuming it goes to the general fund.
Right.
We have another speaker regarding conservation and environmental. Okay, thank you. And before you start, as you're writing your name down, Sarah, do we have anybody on the line that wants to speak?
Yes, and if they want you to just kind of raise their hand.
Okay, so if anyone's on the line would like to speak, of course, on the line we also have Judy Barrett, who's our consultant from Mass Housing. So we need to have her unmuted, but anytime, Judy, you can jump into action. Thank you. And please, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This is a bit about North Attleboro, but it could be North Harwich. 2 years ago, this month, 10 inches of rain fell in North Attleboro. It cascaded in sheets down the land. The 10-mile river, which drains a watershed of 54 square miles, was overpowered. Raging floodwaters inundated streets and washed away everything in their path, from vehicles to buildings and their foundations. At least 200 homes were damaged, many left uninhabitable. Streets were closed, roads undermined, sinkholes formed. With no power and the middle school as a temporary shelter, a state of emergency was declared. What happened there could happen here. By removing too much vegetation and soil and replacing it with hardscape and heat islands, we've crossed a tipping point. Water that was once allowed to infiltrate the ground now rushes away, picking up sediment and contaminants to become destructive stormwater. Water should be a life-giving force. By ignoring the balance of the natural water cycle, we've turned water into a destructive force. The solution to balance the water cycle is to recognize the land's natural right to keep the rainwater that falls on it. Water is a vital resource that's best kept where it lands to support the complex web of soil life and plant growth. In its natural cycle, it will recharge our river and reduce the frequency of drought stress as plants release water vapors, which condense into dew or cool by evaporation. Rainwater should not be viewed as a nuisance to be quickly drained away and disposed of. If native trees, an understory, and ground cover are left to absorb and hold water, the volume of stormwater will decrease. A property will require less expensive management and will suffer less damage. By minimizing stormwater, flood risks are lowered. The roofs of 10 buildings surrounded by hard paved roads and parking areas will sluice water away for disposal instead of allowing it to do and return to the earth to be naturally recharged to the Erin River. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Sue Shaw, 326 Main Street, North Harwich.
Oh, Sue?
We need to take care of Harwich herself. We have a lot of centurions in Harwich, in the town of Harwich, but Harwich is our eldest elder, and many diverse ecosystems that make up Harwich need to be cared for and protected, not unlike we take care of our individual selves. Moderation is key. It is excess that harms. This proposed project is excess. We know the Herring River already has health issues. We know we have limited groundwater. We know we have had state-implemented water restrictions in 21, 22, 23, and now 25. I talked with someone at the water department who'd been here 19 years and said none before that. The water department said that climate change is a contributing factor. It's the lack of snowfall and rain. They said a good portion of the water goes to irrigation in a day when it goes from 1 million gallons to 4 to 6 million gallons when irrigation is turned on. We continue to tax our limited resources. We then have to backpedal, as with the Herring River, to fix things that we cause. We can anticipate the problems with this enormous proposed project, that the problems that it would present. The destruction of 33 plus acres of Harwich's environment and ecosystems which exist within it would be devastating. It would displace many species and kill thousands of other species that should not have an escape route. Can you imagine how many turtles, as well as other species that could not run or fly, would just be plowed under? This would be the untold suffering for these species. When I used to ride my horse on those acres, I would see species such as deer, squirrels, birds, and raccoons. I see coyotes come from those woods nightly. I also regularly hear owls and see bats that fly from the woods looking for mosquitoes. In June, I photographed lady slipper behind my fence, which is on the edge of those woods. This proposed project would destroy a huge area of Harwich's environment. Please let's look at using buildings that already exist, like the firehouse renovation, which is a prime example. That was a huge win for affordable housing. Harwich Housing Trust, like our Harwich Land Trust, which would have no loss of money to middlemen. The money would all be reinvested in the trust and to grow affordable housing.
30 seconds.
These developers are not even saying how long the affordable housing units would be affordable. The words they're using for is an extended period, quote unquote. They're trying to get this in under 40B, but after that extended period, which is not defined and needs to be, there is nothing stopping Pine Oaks from renting at market value. And they want tax help to get to this point.
Time's up, Michelle.
You take it, you complete your comments in 15 seconds, that'd be great.
Okay. So let's please take care of Harwich and not overdevelop her. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Not necessarily for the ecology.
I understand. We have approximately 10 minutes left in our public speaking period. So now someone else would like to speak up. And before I do that, Sarah, anybody online?
Nobody's raised their hand.
Okay. So, anyone come up and speak regarding any subject involved in this project? Thank you. Okay. So we can fit in basically 3 more speakers.
From my understanding,
Your name, please?
Sherry Stockdale. From my understanding, the affordable units only need to remain affordable for 30 years and then they can revert to market rate. But it's also my understanding that the town can negotiate that with the applicant to make it a longer period of time. I just have to reiterate how much it sticks in my craw that as long as 25% of this is affordable, all 242 units would count on the shy list. So that's like pretend affordable housing. That is such a sham.
If I can interrupt 1 quick second so everyone understands this. And I forget the percentage, but over 190 units of this 242 unit project, project development, are being assigned at 80% or less. So they, far greater percentage is under that 25%. So they're closer to the 70+% range, not the 25% range which the state requires.
But if you look at the pro forma that actually lists what the rents would be, I think you'll see that many are very close to market value and are just slightly affordable.
So I understand. I just want to qualify the fact that they far exceeded the expectations under the 40B bylaws.
And I also just want to bring up turtles. Turtles and amphibians are on the decline globally. Scientists have been monitoring this crisis since the 1980s and consider it one of the most critical threats to global biodiversity. The overall picture for both groups is distressing. There are several species of frogs, toads, salamanders, and turtles that have been thriving on the proposed site for decades. The habitat destruction that would be caused by POV would greatly and negatively impact their populations. When you kill one turtle, you don't just kill that turtle. You kill all of its future eggs and offspring, and their future eggs and offspring. The end of birth is the beginning of extinction. something to consider before the caterpillars and bulldozers get back there and start popping turtle shells.
If I may, with regard to affordability, my decision, my draft decision to you will have a condition in it that there be a local affordability agreement that will kick in if the state's affordability, rider, if that goes away, then the town regulatory agreement will kick in. And so it will require that the units remain affordable as long as the development is not in compliance with zoning. So correct.
Thank you. Yes, and your name and...
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Matt Sutphin, Harvard Center. I made it my business last week to do a little research on the shy list, and since one of your board members mentioned it earlier in the evening, I thought I'd give you my assessment. In Massachusetts, there are 351 towns, and apparently 200 of them have now a greater percentage than 5%, leaving about 150 towns below the 5%. We're right on the margin, right in the middle. There are 40 towns in Harwich that have zero, in Massachusetts, that have 0%. In other words, I don't want anybody out there to think the sky's falling in if we don't rush to get a 6, 7, 8, or 9. We are a long way from having somebody put the hammer on us by state standards, and that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thanks. I've already signed it, and Mickey Madison, I'm speaking for myself. I've been to pretty much most of the meetings, and I keep coming away with what I think is a fundamental question, and that is, who should be served by this proposed development? And I think it's important, who should be served? And since this is all contingent on 40B, it should be people in need of affordable housing. And so I did a little research, and in Massachusetts I said, what are the criteria for finding an optimal location for affordable housing? And the responses I got back when I checked off the criteria, this location didn't fit. It's not safe from a traffic perspective. It's not convenient to services. It's got no access to public transportation. And now tonight, it is at odds with an environmentally threatened area. So I have to say, I just don't see it serving the people it's supposed to serve. I think we need to find the places that meet the optimal criteria and make those the places to put affordable housing. That's just my 2 cents.
And we have time for one more speaker. I didn't mean it.
Not him again. Tom Birch, again, 76 and 262 Queen Anne Road. One thing I forgot when I was talking about the water was you're going to have all these areas landscaped. Is there a factor for the irrigation water that you're going to be trucking in here? Are they going to have irrigation? How much area is going to be covered in a ballpark of tens of thousands of gallons of additional water being brought into the area that will have potentials to leach into the water system? Just something for you guys to think about and ask those questions and ask these gentlemen over here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and just Sarah, one last time, there's nobody online that wants to speak?
May I just say one more thing?
Excuse me?
May I say one more thing?
Please, that'll be fine, go ahead.
Shaw again. This is something I don't really want to say, but I just wanted you guys to know that, that there was a lot of flyers put out for this meeting, and they're created, printed, posted in public bulletin boards. Most of these flyers were removed and were not there anymore. It can be illegal to remove a notice from public bulletin board, as public bulletin boards serve as a platform for legitimate postings, and unauthorized removal can be a violation of local ordinances and state statutes. It actually constitutes vandalism against the property where the notice is posted, or against the notice itself as a form of public information. Removal can interfere with the public's ability to access the information. The citizens of Harwich have a right to know what is going on with this proposed project, and the removal will jeopardize that, I feel. And I would just like to say that if we come up to the next meeting and we feel that we need another meeting because people didn't know what was going on, that I would like to request that we get that other meeting. And it just seems wrong that people do things like that.
Well, thank you, and that concludes our public comment period. We'll state the fact that I had checked Town Hall here regarding signs, and they were still, available today. I did not check the community center, but those are the only places it was posted. So we know that originally this meeting was posted on the website since the springtime of being since the summer, early summer, to be at this location. The change came as a fact of changing because of the sound system, but it was always posted for September 17th at this location, and that did not change. Okay. Right. But we will check that again. Now we'll look at the future schedule. Oh, first of all, before we get into that, are any additional comments or questions from the board, or anyone, maybe applicants, or not the applicant, but any speakers tonight? Yes.
I'm also confused as to the parameters of this project legally for how the units are going to be rented at what prices. And I have heard more than a couple of different scenarios, but I would like, at least by the next meeting, to have it very clearly stated how the units are going to be rented and the cost of them and for how long. It was told to me by a member here that it was in perpetuity when I asked, but it sounds as if that isn't accurate. I would like to know exactly how these will be priced.
We will certainly submit something in writing prior to the hearing and go over it at the next hearing.
Thank you.
I'm assuming that will be a clarification of what's already in the application. Is that correct?
Yes, we thought it was clear, but we'll certainly clarify.
Judy, do you have any comments about tonight's meeting? Any suggestions on how we proceed going forward?
Hi, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, no, I think, your plan for going forward, as I understand it, makes sense. I think the meeting tonight was helpful. I hope it was helpful to the board. I don't have any particular comments about what was said, but I'm happy to be assistance to the board if you need me.
Thank you. Any council, do you have any thoughts or comments about tonight?
Just that the official posting.
So folks, I tell you, as Andy just commented, the official posting for the town is the website, and that was clearly posted regarding tonight's meeting in ample time. At this time, I'd like to And I believe I informed the applicant of the next meeting. There's going to be an additional meeting that's being scheduled. So I'm going to move to the board to continue this case to the next scheduled public hearing on September 24th at 8 p.m. at the Harwich Town Hall at 732 Main Street, Harwich in the Griffin Room. This will be during our standard meetings, but our next scheduled monthly meeting only has 4 cases, and I feel we're going to have an hour. Our board needs more time to discuss this case. At that meeting, I just want to be clear, there will be no public comment period. It is strictly an opportunity for our board to take that time to discuss where we're at on these hearings, the next steps that need to be considered as we go forward. Of course, the public is invited. I just want to understand the fact that it's strictly for a discussion period of the board. The applicant is also invited, but there will be no new testimony, nor will there be any questions asked of the applicant. Okay? And I make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Board, all those in favor? Aye. Is there any additional new or old business that needs to be discussed before we adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, can you talk about any additional dates that you want to announce?
No, I'm not going to talk about any additional. Well, the next date that's been scheduled after this is October 15th.
Where?
That would be here. And we certainly, at the end of the next meeting, we will verify the next date that these meetings, these hearings will be continued. If we have an opportunity to meet prior to the 15th or shortly afterwards, the board may do that. I would also, as coming from the chair, we'll discuss this at the next meeting on the 24th. But given the amount of work that needs to be accomplished, I may want to consider to have Judy Barrett or Amy Wessel discuss with the applicant an opportunity to extend the hearings. After the 20th or 21st of October, currently now the hearings need to be concluded, and then the board goes into up to a 40-day deliberation period for us to render a decision. After that period of time, I think we have 12 or 20 days to file the decision with the town clerk. Okay. If there's no other business to discuss, it's 9:42, and then adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. I need a motion.